we know that the slope between any 2 points can be calculated using the formula shown, or just thinking about the concept of change in y over change in x by counting on a graph, various ways. And not a problem, and we've calculated slope a number of different times between sets of points. The question I have now is, or the thing I want to talk about really, is the relationship between slope and lines, because we also very often talk about the slope of a line, not just the slope between 2 points. Well, I've got a couple of points here on the grid labeled, and we can hopefully calculate the slope between these 2 points very quickly. If I take the point -3, 4 as being point number 1, then that would mean y2 would have to be a 1 coming from point number 2. And x2 would be a 1. That means y1 would be a 4, and x1 would be a -3. And simplifying the arithmetic, that means I get a -3 in the numerator, and since these signs cancel, I get a +4 in the denominator, so my slope is a -3/4 between those 2 points. Well, we also know that 2 points determine a line, so if I go ahead and place a line through these 2 points, we would refer to the slope of that line as being -3/4, and we could get it by picking any 2 points on the line. That means if I look down here, let's say, oh, I've got another point that appears to be on this line that has coordinates 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a y coordinate of -2. And again, if we calculate the slope quickly between say 5, -2, and 1, 1, you would calculate the same -3/4. So this line has a negative slope. And it also can be looked at as falling from left to right. And this is going to be true for any line that falls left to right. If I change it, I can see that my change in y relative to my change in x, well, in this case, my change in y is a negative value, and my change in x is a positive value, a negative y because I'm going down, a positive x because I'm going to the right. The ratio of signs when they are different is always going to end up being negative. And so no matter how I figure this out, I'm going to get a negative slope. In other words, if I instead chose a positive change in y, well, in order to get back on the line, the only way to do it would be traveling a negative change in x. And again, my signs are going to be different. So the ratio of change in y to change in x is going to be negative, and the line falls left to right. If I then look, and I go ahead and look at a line which actually, instead of falling left to right, rises left to right, we can see that if we then, again, look at a change in y, well, as being positive to get from that point, well, to get back on the line, I've got to go to the right, which means it's a positive value for my change in x. So the ratio of two positive numbers, that's going to give me a positive value for slope for that line. If, again, I went in a different direction and started with a negative change in y by going down, the only way to get back on the line is a negative change in x. And so my changes are again of the same sign, so the ratio of a negative to a negative is going to give me a positive value of slope. So any line that rises left to right will have a positive slope. To sum up then, any line that rises from left to right is going to have a positive slope because the ratio of the change in y to the change in x, well, delta y and delta x will always have the same sign, so their ratio will always end up being positive. Thus, the slope of the line will always be a positive when rising left to right. And any line that falls from left to right will have a negative slope because the change in y's and the change in x will have different signs and will always end up simplifying to a negative value.